Globalization, a word we hear every day, or maybe even more than that. It surrounds us. It's in our TVs and on our radios and our newspapers. All in all, our media is flooded with talk of globalization. Furthermore, it is in everything we do and see. In the everyday products and services we use to perform our daily lives. If you think about it, globalization is in everything we see and touch. You wake up every morning and from the moment you open your eyes, you can see evidence of globalization. You live in a house that is made of wood that comes from a rainforest in South America. Drive to work in a car that was probably made in Mexico, eat lunch at a local Greek restaurant, and before you go to bed you watch the news and hear the anchor tell you about the economic problems in Europe. As I'm sure you can tell, our world is a very globalized place. Ulrich Beck said, accordingly, globalization is not only something that will concern and threaten us in the future, but something that is taking place in the present, and to which we must first open our eyes. But what is globalization? Our Canadian government says it describes the increased mobility of goods, service, labor, technology, and capital through the world. But a group called Anti-Marketing describes it differently. They say it is the process of exploiting economically weak countries by connecting the economies of the world, forcing dependence and ultimately subservience to the Western capitalist machine. As you can see, there are clearly two sides to globalization. Many pros and cons. It is a great controversy that affects every aspect of our lives. But in order to know whether or not globalization has a positive or negative impact, we must first understand it. Globalization has many negative effects on our world. It is a system that exploits the poor. It lowers our government's sovereign power, and it outsources our jobs. Wool Angday of the Yellow Times said, "The aggressive spread of market economics and communication technologies, often under the control of Western multinationals, brings new challenges to local cultures and values in Africa and other non-Western societies. Sometimes it seems as if a tidal wave of the most worst Western culture is creeping across the globe, like a giant strawberry milkshake oozing over the planet, with a flavor that is distinctly sweet, sticky, and manifestly homogeneous. By creating a globalized world, we lose cultures. If there is globally one culture, then there is no room for other cultures. Globalization is forcing the world to come together and have one economy, one culture, and one language. We can already see the effects of this taking place. An article from CBC News said that there is a rapid decrease in the amount of people globally learning French as a second language, and furthermore, the language is becoming less useful to a globalized world. But if all other languages are eradicated, then with them will go the cultures they represent. Globalization can also be bad for our jobs. The industrial world seeks the cheapest way to produce goods so that their profit margins are expanded on a massive scale. And the way this is done is by outsourcing jobs to countries with non-unionized workers, lower minimum wages, and standards of living. This outsourcing exploits the third world and the first. People are losing their jobs because of globalization. Many North American plants are being shut down and moved across the ocean. Rob Peterson, writing Pros and Cons of Globalization on Homeretics.com, says, apart from the initial problem of exploited foreign workers, the shift in outsourcing has also resulted in the loss of employment among those in domestic manufacturing sectors. In addition, the weakening of labor unions and lowering of wages has also been regarded as a negative impact. The major con in globalization is that it doesn't care about the people who are negatively affected. There is a spirit about it that seems to shout, all for progress, any cost for progress. Ex-President Jimmy Carter sums this up when he said, globalization, as defined by rich people like us, is a very nice thing. You are talking about the internet, you're talking about cell phones, you're talking about computers. This doesn't affect 2/3 of the world's population. In the same spirit, Michael Albert of Duke University said, "Capitalism is a thug's economy, a heartless economy, a base and vile, largely boring economy. This is the antitheist of human fulfillment and development. It mocks equality and justice. It enriches greed. Capitalism sucks." Does anyone seriously want to contest that? But there is another side to globalization, one that is very good for the world and everyone in it. Globalization opens trade barriers. It allows us access to products that we never would have had access to. It allows us to exchange goods. If one country has lots of wood but no stone, and the other has the opposite problem, they are able to trade and get what they need. It gives jobs to the third world, much needed jobs, allowing thousands of families to survive. Jeffrey Dunham of Duke University suggests that globalization offers a higher standard of living for people in rich countries, and it is the only realistic route out of poverty for the world's poor. Pro-globalization groups, e.g. the World Trade Organization and the World Economic Forum, believe that globalization helps to reduce poverty and increase living standards as well as encourage a better cultural understanding. Also due to globalization, there can be international cooperation to solve environmental and social problems. By uniting the world under one banner, there is more possibility that the world's problems will be solved. If we are one world, the poor countries will be taken care of by the richer. Globalization will force us to overlook country lines and see humanity. Trade will be easier and freer than ever. This will reduce need and poverty. The world will be allowed to grow by helping each other. When every country is affected by the other, there will be pressure on the world to take care of the poor. Razin Sally of the London School of Economics had this to say about globalization. Globalization, then, is growth promoting. Growth, in turn, reduces poverty. The liberalization of international transactions is good for freedom and prosperity. The anti-liberal critic is wrong. Marginalization, in large parts, is caused by not enough rather than too much globalization. Globalization also helps our world take a huge step forward in technology. Innovations are being made that will increase our quality of life. Murray Windenbaum, author of Weighing the Pros and Cons of Globalization, said, "Global competition also keeps domestic business on their toes. It forces them to improve and innovate the quality of their products." After all, if competition is a good thing, spreading it out internationally is even better. More fundamentally, rapidly developing economies generate a new middle class. That is the bulwark of support for professional liberty as well as economic freedom. Kevin O'Rourke and Jeffrey Williamson of Globalization and History, Cambridge, Mass. MIT Press, 1999, say, "The most fundamental and positive result of globalization is not economic at all. By enabling more people to use modern technologies to communicate across traditional national boundaries, the international marketplace makes possible a far greater exchange of the most powerful factors of production, new ideas. That process enriches and empowers the individual in ways never before possible." In closing, Barack Obama said, "There are some who believe that we must turn back the clock on this new world. That the only chance we have to maintain our standards of living is to build a fortress around America, to stop trading with other countries, to shut down immigration and rely on old industries. I disagree. Not only is it impossible to turn back the tide of globalization, but efforts to do so can actually make us worse off. So rather than fear the future, we must